The Bears.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to the Sick Podcast. It's me, Adam Rank, talking about the Bears draft picks. I got to be honest with you, a lot of Bears Twitter is melting down. Apocalyptic. I got to open this drink. Everybody's crying. I'm going to make it. I'll be okay. Listen, a lot of people are upset. A lot of people don't understand what is going on, and that's okay. But I think that when you look at the picks and the selection that the Bears needed, they went with some value picks. We thought that Kyler Gordon was a player who was going to go at the end of the first round. He was somebody that I talked about glowingly. As a matter of fact, if you listen to the podcast this week, when we had on Brendan Shagrew, we talked about how I had resigned myself to the fact that the Bears were going to take a cornerback. I think that the value on the board was what it was. Now, obviously, Minnesota drafted the guy that I was talking about. But again, I'm going to allow the men in charge of making the draft picks to go ahead and do the evaluation. I might look at a player and say, oh, this is the guy that I would like. But when you look at it based solely on draft picks or on draft values, I should say, I think the Bears needed to go cornerback right there. There was just, the value was too good. And even though I have been talking about this for quite some time, talking about the fact that, look, we need to start just drafting all offensive players, I realized what the score was, what was going on. And it is really one of those things, like as much as the Bears need help at the wide receiver position, perhaps on the offensive line. Listen, I'll tell you this right now. If the Bears are really locked in to Borum and Jenkins, maybe this is a endorsement of those guys. Maybe they do like them. Maybe they feel like they have the offensive lineman that they need. But I think ultimately they needed to draft a cornerback. They needed to add one more guy. You added a really good one at a great value. And so I look at the cornerbacks now with Jalen Johnson. We got Kyler there. We got Tommy Graham. Like now we're starting to look at like, okay, we've got some cornerbacks. We've actually done a nice job. The biggest surprise to me was that we went with the safety with our second round pick, which was a little bit of a shock. And I think, again, everybody in Chicago had worked themselves into a fever going with George Pickens. Like that was going to be our guy. Chicago had decided, and everybody who follows the Bears or who's on Bears Twitter or anything like that had decided that George Pickens was the guy. And he didn't get drafted. And to me, again, I'm going to go back and allow the scouting to play out the way that the Bears want it to. Obviously, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus have a vision for this team that extends beyond, I should say, this season. And you know what? The secondary, all of a sudden, sitting here in the second night of the draft, now might be a position of strength. And we've got some pretty good pass rushers. Like we've done a nice job of signing some free agents who will come in here to make an impact for us. Gibson last year was a stud and now moving back to his natural 4-3 position. And again, I know that we all get wrapped up a little bit too much in the the defense. We don't want to be this, we're going to win with our defense type of team, but you still need to address the defensive side of the football. The Bears probably did the right thing. I think they took two very talented players. And the vision that they have for this team is starting to become evident. And I just don't think that they valued the wide receivers the same way that we did. And you have to remember, we still have a third round pick coming up here in a matter of moments. And we'll see which direction they go in there. There's still a lot of talent available at that position. There's still an opportunity to trade down. There's still an opportunity to move some players. And so, you know what? I know it's upsetting. to lose out on George Pickens. I know, listen, you guys were apocalyptic when Ryan Bates went back to Buffalo. I can't imagine where the George Pickens fans are now. Actually, I just shut off Twitter. I'm not even going on there. I'm not even doing that. I will say this. The fact that the Steelers drafted him, though, that is a little bit of a concern. Like the Steelers, who drafts better receivers than the Steelers? Nobody. And Chase Claypool having to go on there and announce that pick. But again, I think most teams in the NFL need 3 quality wide receivers. The Bears are trying to do it with 1. But at the same time, so that's, if you want to throw that at me and you're like, well, the Steelers like them, you're like, okay, I have no defense for that. I find that to be indefensible. So it's fine. It's fine. I just don't want everybody to freak out and get overly concerned. It's a long process. And we can't expect, again, there was not a player in the draft that would have turned is the make or break it for the future. And we talked about this on the podcast this week, is that the Bears are on a trajectory very similar to what the Philadelphia Eagles did with Jalen Hurts this year. And obviously, Philadelphia just made the big splash move for A.J. Brown. Similarly, they will be in a position to do that next season and to start taking some swings in free agency and start acquiring talent that way. I think right now the smartest thing to do is just start team building. I would have liked to have made, maybe a trade down, something like that. I don't think that, if you're drafting safety there, I would have kind of liked to perhaps acquire more picks, but you got to also understand nobody's rushing up to make these picks. You know what I'm saying? It's fine. It's a great theory. We can sit here and be like, this is what we should do, which is always similar to when I play golf. It's like, well, this is the shot that I should hit. Not always able to do that. And I think this is a position the Bears found themselves in tonight. They probably would have liked to have traded down. I'm sure that they wanted Kyler Gordon for sure. But I think at the same time, they would have traded down if they could have. They couldn't. We got the picks that we got. I don't think that it's anything to be overly concerned of. By the way, Sammy, let me ask you, are there any questions? Because I'll take a few questions. I know you guys, listen, Sammy and them, they want to go to bed. I'm keeping them up late, making them do this. If Justin Fields plays the way we are hoping, he will. It won't matter what wide receivers we have. Needed to strengthen that secondary, though. Scotty, I love the perspective there. I think that's a great point. I really do believe that we've seen some quarterbacks do well with lesser wide receivers. I mean, if we're going to be completely honest, Aaron Rodgers locks in on one guy. There is still some value there. And there's still going to be some veterans available. I'm still going to long for possibly Brandon Cooks or somebody like that. But I think there's still an opportunity to improve that wide receiver room. I think there's also a chance that we start looking at the undrafted free agent market for some of these wide receivers. That might be an opportunity. And again, this is a very deep draft class for wide receiver. Let's wait to see what we have at the end of the day, at the end of Saturday, I should say. But listen, it is what it is. I know that a lot of you are disappointed. I don't want you to be. I want you to hang tough as much as possible and understand that this is going to be a process. It's not going to be something, do you think we go free agent, the wide receiver now? If so, who? Again, there's going to be a second wave of free agency, depending on who's being drafted where. We still have to wait and see what's going to happen with Byron Pringle when that situation is going to be worked out. And I still think there's some values to go out there. There is going to be plenty of values that we can go out there and acquire. We might not get any big names, but I do believe that there's going to be an opportunity to improve the position. And we got Darnell Mooney. And it is what it is. It's tough to just blow it off that way. But this is one of the things that Ryan Poles talked about, was that he was not going to overvalue players just based on need. I know that everybody has been screaming from the rooftops to, hey, let's draft a wide receiver. Well, you don't want to just draft a wide receiver just to draft a wide receiver. You got to make sure that you're true to your board. We've had a lot of needs on this team. So it's not like wide receiver was the only position that we needed to address in the draft here. But you know what? I don't think it worked out. We saw the early run on wide receiver in the first round. No, not even. Poles is not Pace 2.0. Pace would have traded up. He would have mortgaged the future for one of these draft picks. So if anything, we've got a guy who's very deliberate, is sticking to his word, is doing the proper team building, and I think that we're going to end up having a competitive team. I know it would have been nice, but we weren't in a position to draft guys like Chris Olave and some of the first rounders for whatever reason. There was some reason why George Pickens did not check out for the Chicago Bears, and we'll see this play out over the next 4 or 5 years. This could be something that we look back on and are kicking ourselves like, why didn't we grab this guy? Or at the same time, we dodged a bullet. But all I know is that we drafted 2 players that are very talented, can come in immediately and start. So I think that's important. But you know what? I want to thank everybody. Listen, I wasn't going to spend a lot of time here. What I'm going to do right now, though, anybody who is watching this show, we're going to head over to the Tape Never Lies Network. I'm going to go barge in on Draft Dr. Phil. I'm sure they're super morose. I'm going to go over there, try to spread my message of positivity to everybody, and we'll discuss it, and we'll have a good time with that. But I will tell you, Tuesday, we will have Draft Dr. Phil Tuesday night. Take it to the rank. We'll discuss that. We're going to be working on another guest for Thursday. Maybe Burlissimo will be available to us, or somebody. Jacob Infante. We'll reach out to one of the draft nicks. Maybe. I don't want to promise people, but we will have a great guest for you on Thursday. We've got a lot to discuss. There's still a long way to go, so don't freak out. Thank you for watching. And right now, go find me on the Tape Never Lies Network. Well, I will be joining Draft Dr. Phil and the gang. I'm sure Shane is there, and we'll go over there. We'll have a good time. But until Tuesday, bear down, and remember, it's not going to be that bad. So bear down. Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.